You mentioned the poll where you got 74% of people saying they totally oppose this bill, but you described the bill in the question saying that it would allow telephone companies to stop providing additional service where it is no longer profitable for those companies. And you could have described it differently. You could have said where there is alternative cell phone service or something like that. Instead, you chose to say where it's no longer profitable. I mean, what does the bill say? Does the bill say anything about profits? Or, I mean, just talk about why that was the question.
Somebody here was talking about the profitability question. I believe you had a grasp of it.
I don't know if I addressed it earlier, but
I mean, the thrust of my question is, doesn't that skew
the bill? Yeah, the bill doesn't talk about profitability. I mean, in fact, the companies will continue to make profits on basic landline service. In fact, one of the other problems with the bill is it basically eliminates any rate controls. If incumbent phone carrier abandons basic local phone service and somebody else takes it over, or if the original incumbent carrier is enticed to come back in and reoffer it, then even the limit of a price of rate increases of $1.25 a year goes away, and they can raise rate increases ad infinitum. And the cost of maintaining their current copper networks is minimal. They've basically already been paid for. So it's not a question of it not being profitable. They want more profits, they want greater profits, but they would still be profitable. But to answer your original question, no, there's nothing in the bill itself that mentions profitability.
Well, I'm just saying, doesn't the way you ask the question skew the results?
Every question does have some, what if you want to call it, skewing's a little strong term. Paul Fallon of Fallon Research, he does statewide public policy polls several times a year, and polling data is only good if the polling questions are correctly formulated. He's an expert at it, and I trust his work, so I don't think it skews it at all.
Did Fallon Research come up with the question, or did you guys have a hand in it?
I believe Fallon Research handled it as part of the comprehensive poll they do on other issues as well.
Was the poll conducted by calling landline numbers only, or were cell phones included?
I don't know the answer to that.
You said if it's two alternative providers, then they can withdraw. So is the concern that there are some places within the exchange that won't have access to landlines at all, or is it just access to affordable landlines?
The short answer is both. I mean, in some areas there may not be any alternative providers, there may only be one. Also, even if there are quote-unquote alternative providers, they may not offer affordable service, they may not offer affordable unlimited rate service as we have with the basic landline phone service. It also, as one of the speakers indicated, may not be reliable service. If all you have is a cell phone provider and where you live, that service is spotty, or if you need to call 911 and they can't locate you, or if there's a power outage and cell phone service goes out, then you're left with any alternative. So it's both the absence of any alternative providers in certain areas and the absence of any comparable, affordable, reliable providers in other areas.
But will everyone have access to at least one landline service?
No, because alternative providers would not be other landline providers generally. They would be either cell phone providers or VoIP providers through cable.
And if I can add to that, like the legislation...
Could you move over to the microphone?
I'm sorry. If I could add to that, the problem that I see with the language is that the alternative providers, the language says somewhere in the exchange, not everywhere. So if you wanted to take that at its literal explanation, somewhere could mean one customer out of 1 million, or it could mean 700,000 out of 1 million. But it's possible, yes, that people could be without a landline option or a comparable service, whether it's reliable or affordable. I guess that's notwithstanding.
Mr. Gage, you mentioned that there has not been an explosion of development of broadband in rural areas since the passage of the last bill. Can you elaborate on that? That was one of the things that was discussed.
Yeah, so when we worked on the last bill, we had a vested interest in coming to some sort of compromise legislation that would encourage companies to invest and also protect Ohio consumers. And we thought the previous legislation in 2010, Senate Bill 162, did that. And our hope was that we would see a large increase in investment by the telecommunications providers in Ohio. And I want to be sure to say, yes, they've invested, but not to the extent in rural areas that we had hoped, that we would have some sort of fiber to the home or, fiber to the neighborhood, something that would advance Ohio's rural communities somewhere into the digital future in some sort of affordable way. So I guess the answer to that would be, yeah, there hasn't been an explosion of investment, especially in rural Ohio.
The industry says that basically the load that the network carries has exploded beyond anybody could have imagined due to smartphones and a bunch of other technology. You find that unconvincing?
No, I agree that obviously the cellular network, no matter which company you talk to, has been an explosion of data. However, in much of rural Ohio, people don't have access to those 3G and 4G networks, or perhaps not even access at all, depending on the geographical lay of the land. Some of our other speakers talked extensively, about the rural parts of Ohio, and I'm sure many of you have driven through areas where there's not cell phone coverage, or you drop a call. Lots of folks aren't able to access that high-speed wireless service, which is why our position would be we would like to see expansion of a landline broadband network, more so than we've seen to date.
Democrats in the legislature pride themselves on advocating for the same groups that you say you're advocating for: minorities, poor people, Appalachia, the elderly. How do you explain then the fact that when this was in the Senate, it passed, I'm told it passed 30-3. Democrats didn't seem to put up much of a fight. Any explanation for what happened there?
Well, it appears, and I say appears, that Democrats in the House will put up a much bigger fight. In fact, even some Republicans, those who were bombarded with phone calls from senior citizens in Ohio, are now somewhat wary of the bill. So we expect that it will be a much closer battle, much more contentious battle in the House.
Mike Turner again with United Seniors, and I came up for another reason, the Statehouse, and actually in the Senate, every floor was full of people, and I didn't know what was going on. And it was represented to me, and it's anecdotal, but it was told to me that this was lobbyists from AT&T. Now, that might not have been the fact. I can't verify that, but it was amazing. I've never seen so many people in the Senate office and people roaming around. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of telecommunication companies who are very interested in this bill passing and are willing to spend money to make that happen through their lobbying ventures.
Yeah, I might add, again, this is Mike Small, so how Harvey posted it again. The last time we checked, the incumbent phone companies led by AT&T had 34 paid lobbyists working to get this bill passed. Now, they weren't working full-time just on this bill, to be fair, but they were paying 34 lobbyists to try to ram this through the legislature. And I think that helps explain why it may have gone through the Senate.
Mr. Sundermeyer, AARP has made this issue, issue alerts, I believe we call it, warning constituents that their lawmaker voted for a bill that will remove their landline service, that sort of thing. If this bill passes in lame duck session, is your, I guess, that tactic kind of a moot point, or does AARP have a way to apply pressure nonetheless?
We'll be communicating with our members with respect to how candidates for office are inclined to vote before the election day.
So you're counting on an election survey, basically?
That's one, yes.
Candidate survey?
Yes.
And do you find that many people are actually filling those out?
I'm sorry?
Do you find that candidates are actually filling those out?
It's too early to tell at this point. But if a candidate chooses not to respond, our members will know that as well.